Hello guys, this is your friend. We are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto flew with Haku and Zabuza to protect his secret, Part 1 Naruto x Haku. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start a new fanfic. Naruto gasped as Haku stood over him and Sasuke's body. Naruto gazed up fleetingly into Haku's eyes. The ice user gave a look of remorse before he raised a hand of Sanban's towards Naruto. The blonde boy flinched at the sight. Naruto-kun, Haku said, I do not wish to kill you. Please stay still and do not move. Once the bridge builder is killed, you may leave and live to fight another day. The ice boy knelt in front of Naruto and placed a cold hand to the Kyuubi vessel's whiskered cheek. You have nothing to fear, Naruto. I will not kill you if you do not do anything stupid. Along the bridge, Kakashi and Zabuza continued their fight. Kakashi's dogs had missed Zabuza by inches and had been dispersed by a swipe of his Zanbato. Damn mutts, Zabuza cursed as this time he sliced Kakashi's hand. Ah, did I scratch the poor copycat? The demon of the mist goaded. Kakashi glared kunai at the other masked ninja before him. Zabuza was pushing his last nerves and soon he would have to use Raikiri on the ex-mist nin. What's the matter? Kakashi teared. Well, if your hair is any indication of your age, then you should have retired years ago, Zabuza said as the scarecrow growled in anger. Shut up, Kakashi said venomously. Zabuza chuckled insanely. Well, I hate long goodbyes, so goodbye, bastard, and he poised his sword above his head as he leapt at Kakashi. Naruto watched helplessly as the Zanbato sliced Kakashi's shoulder, causing blood to explode from the wound. Ah, I missed, Zabuza taunted as Kakashi fell to his knees in pain. Kakashi-sensei, Sakura called out to her sensei, who gasped for breath within the mist. Now to deal with our little pest problem, Zabuza spoke, disappearing from in front of Kakashi and reappearing behind Sakura and in front of Tazuna. The bridge builder made a run for it into the mist. Zabuza ignored her and struck Sakura in the back of the head with the hilt of his Zanbato. The pink-haired girl fell faint to the ground as Naruto called out to her. Sakura, he called to her limp form. Zabuza turned to the blonde-haired boy and poised himself to attack. What do ya say, Haku? Should I let him live? You said you thought he was good enough to train. Zabuza asked his accomplice, who looked down at Naruto in pity and sorriness. Don't care if it isn't a real word. Keep him alive, Zabuza-sensei. He's too good to kill and he is too warm-hearted to ever be a true ninja, was the feminine boy's reply. Naruto looked up into Haku's eyes in search of answers. Well, Zabuza. You didn't kill the bridge builder, but you managed to bring down a legend, a whore, an emo kid and a blondie. Came Gato's voice as he appeared through the mist with many of his hired thugs. So there's no more need for you. We can deal with Tazuna by ourselves, the greedy little man promised. Haku shivered from the look Gato was giving him. Then we will take our leave, was the reply of the masked ex-mist nin. Leave? Gato asked. He soon broke into a large laugh and sneered at the two ninja. Who said anything about leaving? No, dear Zabuza, you'll have to be dealt with, and your little servant. He trailed off looking at Haku with ravenous eyes. Doesn't it even bother you that I'm a boy? The ice user asked, disgusted. Pervert, he called Gato. The short man screwed up his face in anger, but it soon turned into a sneer. Well, then you will have to die just like Zabuza here. Over why? RD. Dead body, came a familiar wheezing voice from behind Haku. Zabuza and Haku turned to see Naruto forcing himself to stand on his own 2 feet. His cuts and bruises healing nicely and his eyes burning with rage. Naruto. Haku spoke as he stood. A knife was thrown from Gato at Naruto. However, it merely landed at his feet helplessly. Naruto's eyes flashed red at his fallen comrades. His hands clenched and his nostrils flared open. The temperature fell with THW ground at Naruto's feet, freezing over instantly. Haku, stop, Zabuza commanded. It's not me, Haku insisted. It's Naruto. Haku's eyes widened in recognition. He's just like me. He is of Hyoten. That's impossible, the masked man demanded as his student as a dragon made of ice materialized before Naruto and all those in attendance. A demonic voice rang out from Naruto's mouth and cold and cruel laughter broke out from the boy. Now it's my turn, the voice drawled. Hyoton. Hyorinmaru. The ice dragon shot towards Gato, who became frozen on a block of ice. The thugs around him fled only to be met with the same fate. A spurred prison of ice exploded from around Naruto, cutting off his forehead protector, leaving it fall limp in the ice. The demonic voice once again rang out into the world. Oh well, I don't have enough time. It spoke, guess it's back to the seal. Hopefully the kid'll feel pain as I go back, hee. The voice died down as red chakra turned an icy blue and Naruto fell to the ground in front of his sculpture of ice. What happened? He asked in a husky voice. You killed them, Haku replied, not looking away from Gato's frozen corpse or from the dead mercenaries. Naruto looked on wide-eyed at what he had done. Fear gripped him. He had lost consciousness and now all these people were dead. If the Leaf ever found out about this, then they would. Naruto dreaded to think about it. Zabuza saw the look of fear in his eyes and the look of fulfillment in Haku's. Under his mask he smirked and stood up to face. Hey kid, he called out to Naruto, a plan forming in his head. A scream alerted Kakashi that he was once again awake. His eyes shot up to be met with the pure clean sky of Wave Country. No mist at all. Kakashi sat up to view the damage only to find ice all along the bridge. Sakura had been the one to scream and Sasuke looked on in fear. Gato and his thugs were all frozen in ice, and Naruto's headband lay limp halfway embedded into the ice spire before them. A pool of blood lay in front of the ice spires. Naruto, Zabuza and Haku were nowhere to be seen. The Hokage stood staring out of the window of Naruto's apartment. Word had spread that Naruto had disappeared in his last mission and was possibly dead. Civilians flocked by the bucket load stormed into the apartment every hour only to be met with the Hokage and his stack of paperwork. He used Naruto's apartment as a makeshift office so as to discourage vandals. Homura and Koharu had given him their sympathies when they had heard. Despite common belief, Naruto was actually refreshing for the village. Danzo had come along to sneer in the Hokage's face. Which was the reason that the disabled man was currently in the hospital with medics trying to reattach his hand. Sasuke and Sakura acted as if everything was all normal, it however was far from the truth. Sasuke didn't really care about Naruto muttering about how he deserved it. Sakura seemed pretty shaken up and had taken the habit of crying every so often, claiming it was all her fault. Konohamaru had gotten into countless fights over his Anarchy. Slander was thrown around the village like a beach ball. The honorable grandson had also demanded an Anbu squad be sent out to retrieve Naruto. The civilian Kuniko would have none of it. Greedy merchants with deep pockets, and many more ninja, were using every law they knew to prevent a retrieval team on going after the missing Jinchuriki. First time I ever wrote that word. Sarutobi began to think back to his talk with Kakashi. Flashback jutsu, fear it, love it, be annoyed by its constant use. Kakashi and his two remaining charges walked into the mission's room, the sensei and Kunoichi looking down in the dumps and Sasuke looking slightly smug. Naruto was nowhere to be seen. Ah, Kakashi, Sarutobi said as Squad 7 walked in. Where is Naruto? He asked when no sign of the hyperactive boy was seen. Konohamaru had decided to hide under the table that day and had come blaring out. Where's the boss? He demanded. Silence filled the room as Kakashi replied. Gone. That single word was enough to surprise the Hokage. What do you mean by gone, Kakashi? Do you mean gone to the hospital or, oh no? His eyes widened and a tear fell from his eye. Please don't tell me, no. Sakura was the one who replied then at that second. It was, sniff, horrible. Zabuza, sniff, and his apprentice knocked everyone else out. Sniff, when we woke up all that was left was Naruto's headband and all of Sniff, Gato's men frozen to death in Sniff, pillars of ice. The pink-haired girl soon burst out crying. Zabuza. Gato. Sarutobi spoke. Kakashi explained. The Cyclops retold the entire story starting from just after they left Konoha. When it was over, Iruka, who had been in the mission's office, threw a kunai at Sasuke, who smirked through the entire thing. Show some respect for the dead bastard, he yelled as tears cascaded down his face. Why should I? Sasuke demanded. He's just as damn demon. My father told me so years ago, Sasuke replied in a cold way. Hyoten? Sarutobi asked. Kushina's clan, he exclaimed, standing up to the filing cabinet. Kushina, as in, of F, Kakashi said, eyes widening. Are you telling me that Naruto is his and her son? Then that would mean. Kakashi broke off, unable to finish, fists clenching as Iruka demanded what was going on. I'm afraid, Iruka, that a missing nin now has 2 Hyoten users, and Mokuten user and our resident Jinchuriki. Kai. Sarutobi growled as his secretary walked into the apartment once again with paperwork. It's murder bringing all this paperwork here. Why don't you go back to the office, Lord Hokage? She asked as she glanced disdainfully at a photo of Naruto. Because the villagers are scum, was the reply as Sarutobi released killing intent. And you are no different. Get out and don't come back. She froze in fear before fleeing from the room. As she ran, Sarutobi returned to his copy of Ika Ika and pondered over what to do now. There were only 2 people he could call in a time like this. Summoning jutsu, he said, biting his thumb and placing it on the ground. A small orange monkey popped into existence wearing a postman's outfit. Can I help you? I need to send a message to Jiraiya and Tsunade of the Sannin. Tell them Minato's son has been kidnapped by Zabuza Mamachi. Naruto with Haku as the feminine boy explained the art of ice jutsus. To create ice, a majority of water chakra must be used and a minimum amount of wind chakra must be used. Vapor is the same, only wind is the dominant element, Haku explained as Naruto followed on keenly. So it's like seam and uke. Ice has water as the seam and wind as its uke? Naruto asked. Haku blocked and lost his footing, landing face first into the ground. When he returned upright, he stared at Naruto nervously. Where do you get that from, Naruto? Haku asked, a little frightened that a young kid like Naruto would know anything about yaoi. Oh, back in Konoha, one of the academy teacher handed out these mangas thinking they were textbooks. It was all yaoi and had explanations in the back, was the simple reply. Haku and Zabuza would have laughed at Naruto's innocence, except they were scared stiff on the spot. They glanced at each other nervously, not alike that. Claiming that the other would tell Naruto what those books really were. So, to perfect Hyoten or Yugoten, vapor element, for that matter, you need perfect chakra control or high levels of one of these. You will also need to adapt your chakra so that you can manipulate the desired effect, for example. Hyoton. Yodan Kikan. A large mirror of ice materialized before Haku, giving him a clear view of the Tsuchikage in Iwagakure at his desk, sleeping with a bottle of sake in his hands. Here I manipulated my chakra on a scrying technique. It can show me anywhere I desired. Even on Tsunade of the Sannin, Zabuza jibbed at Haku, who turned beet red. Well, anyway, to master Hyoten you must. Like this? Naruto asked, pointing to a smaller mirror than Haku's. It was smaller, but that was probably due to the lack of chakra control. The glass reflected Wave Country. What? They named a bridge after me. Holy hell. Naruto screeched as the name of the completed bridge was displayed big enough for him to see. I am so cool. How? What? When? Huh? Haku asked in awe at his friend's mirror of ice. It took me 3 weeks to create that, and it took me another 2 months to actually get it to work. And you do it in 5 seconds. The effeminate boy yelled, getting ready to pounce on Naruto. Zabuza snickered as he poked the fire with a stick. It had been 2 weeks since Naruto had joined both him and Haku, and only recently had they been able to stop for rest. Zabuza became paranoid that Naruto had Konoha Anbu on his trail, probably for the Kyuubi. Zabuza recognized a Jinchuriki when he saw one. He had befriended one years ago before they died releasing their demon into the ocean. The Sanbi was still at large to this day. Naruto ran for his life as Haku threw Senbon needles by the shed load at the blonde. Sarutobi-sensei, you better have an explanation for this. Were the words of the infamous chronic gambler, legendary medic, member of the Sanin and legendary Tsunade said as she stormed through the village of Konohagakure. Citizens and ninjas alike recoiled in fear of the slug summoner. Many did not want to be on the receiving end of her legendary ridiculous strength. Genin from other villages too recoiled. What do you mean my son's little boy has been kidnapped? And by a Hyoton user. By now most of the village knew that Suond had a son, who had fathered a boy, who had been kidnapped, and that his kidnapper had been a person who could control ice. Why didn't you tell me about Naruto? She demanded when she finally came face to face with her old sensei. Many of the natives of the Leaf blanched at the news. Through some unknown person, the demon container of the damned nine-tailed fox, Kyuubi, was the grandson of the legendary Tsunade and by extension, a descendant of Hiraishima Senju and his brother. The first two Hokages. Tsunade. Please calm down. Calm down. Are you out of Yourmind? Tsunade screeched at her old sensei. Bad enough you didn't tell me about him, now you're telling me he's been kidnapped by some unknown missing nin from Mist. What were you thinking, not telling me? It was bad enough you sent Anbu to tell me of his death. Tsunade had unfortunately overlooked the fact that the Third's old teammates and Squad 7 and their sensei were in attendance. Tsunade looked over to them with a face that plainly said, "Speak and you will be castrated." Never mind your gender. Tsunade-sama please, Shizune, her assistant, begged. Half of Leaf can hear you and most of them are hiding trying to listen in, she warned. Tsunade however began to punch the aged Hokage through a window. Sasuke Uchiha walked next to Sakura Haruno as they made their way to Team 7's meeting point, the bridge that they usually got a show of ducks in the river below. Sasuke was brooding, as usual, but Sakura however looked pitiful staring into the water thinking of one person in particular. Guilt washed over the young Kunoichi, thinking of how she had hurt the blonde kid whenever he asked for a date. All the cruel things she said to him came flooding back and beat down on her like a ton of bricks. Her pink hair was a mess from not being able to sleep without the horrible nightmares that marred her dreams. It was over 3 hours of silence later when Kakashi decided to make his appearance Shunshining in to meet his team. Yo, he said a lot less enthusiastically than he had done many times before, when he met up with his team. The silence was awkward. Sasuke had a face of, "I don't care about the dobi," painted on his face, Kakashi seemed to have his face set on guilt, and Sakura looked a trauma away from jumping off the bridge. What a pitiful sight it was indeed. I entered you in the Chunin exams. Kakashi told them after then minutes. Sasuke smirked triumphantly at that. But you need a third teammate to participate. Elder Danzo is giving us some one. Kakashi shot Sasuke down. Sakura clenched the side of the bridge tightly. A new teammate. So soon after Naruto was kidnapped. Hadn't they sent someone out to find him yet? Why? We'll meet here tomorrow to meet him. Then we'll train for the exam. Well yeah, Kakashi said before disappearing in a swirl of leaves. About time someone came and got replaced the dobi. Maybe this one will actually be of some use, Sasuke said, causing Sakura to turn and look at him in shock. Sasuke. That's uncalled for, so told him. The Uchiha heir merely sneered. So what? Probably dead by now anyway. Why do you care? He asked as he walked over to her threateningly. She smirked as Sakura flinched in fear. Sasuke no longer made her heart beat faster, now his presence gave her goosebumps. So, why do you care? He asked again. Why do you care for that no-good loser? By this time Sakura had had enough. And Sasuke's cheek met her fist. Asshole, she screamed before running off in tears. Naruto was dead to her belief and Sasuke had no right to insult him in death as he had done in life. Naruto deserved better than that. That day was the day Sakura stopped being a fangirl, and decided to become a kunosehi, after crying her eyes out, that is. Would it help if I said I was sorry? Naruto asked as Haku pulled him along in a cocoon of ice that only left his head free as it was dragged through the woods near the land of the sea. Nope, was the reply from the girly boy. Come on. All this over me learning some stupid technique in less time than you. Naruto whined. What's your problem? What did I do wrong? Haku continued to drag the young boy through the forest as Zabuza made an appearance. Well, we have an interesting find on our hands, boys, he said as he appeared. Funny, he said as he turned. I have a habit of picking up prodigies. 2 Hyoten users, one of which is a Jinchuriki, and a demon like myself, he said before dragging Haku and Naruto by himself. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Stop pulling, Naruto cried as Zabuza pulled him by his hair. Haku was being pulled by one of his long braids, clearly in pain from Zabuza treatment. Where are we going, Zabuza? Haku asked his master as he pulled them closer to a beach where a single graffitied hut lay on a street of stone. There waiting was a girl wrapped in bandages. Her arm, leg and part of her face was covered. Who's she? Naruto asked as they got closer. Zabuza gave a dark chuckle as they reached in front of her. A bag lay at her side and she looked determined, yet uncertain. Boys, this is our new kunoichi. Meet Isaribi, the demon of the ocean. Hinata stared as Sakura punched Sasuke in the face after insulting Naruto. Had Hinata been any braver even by a little bit, she would have gone and hit that Uchiha prick so hard in a certain area, the council would beg Itachi to return to continue the Uchiha clan. Hinata couldn't help but smile as the Uchiha recoiled and smacked right into a pole on the bridge's frame. Behind her, Kiba gave an impassive face. I know Sasuke probably deserved that, but it is Naruto. Maybe they are better off without him, he suggested before a Juken strike was put right between his eyes, throwing him backwards. Isaribi, use Sweden again. Haku 1000 up swings, 2000 down swings, 500 right, 500 left, then somersaults with the sword between your ankles. 50 if those. Naruto, keep on trying Haku's demonic ice mirrors, Zabuza instructed. Even Haku, who was used to this sort of thing with his sensei, groaned. A month later and they were aching all over. Naruto had become efficient with the scrying jutsu and kept tabs of his home village. Zabuza jokingly called him the frozen psychic, when Naruto actually found out about how he could use the mirror to foretell event in the future. Apparently, the bigger the mirror, the further into the future you could see, and the more chakra control a person has, they can use that jutsu to see into the past. Obviously, Naruto had no skill with that part of the jutsu. Isaribi was adept herself in water jutsus. Zabuza remembered the time Naruto and Haku had discovered why she kept herself bandaged up. Naruto style. Flashback jutsu. Isaribi's bandages had been bugging the blonde and the girly boy for 2 weeks now. Naruto discreetly wanted to find out if she had serious burns, and Haku wanted to see how good-looking she was without the bandages covering her face. The older ice boy got it bad. Naruto and Haku followed Isaribi's trail on the way to the beach down the road from their campsite. When they finally caught up to her, she removed her bandages to prepare to submerge. Haku's eyes widened and Naruto recoiled in shock. Isaribi's leg, arm and neck were all green-scaled, part of her forehead and a small area under her eye, were all completely green-scaled. Wow! Naruto said loudly. Hey Isaribi! Naruto called over to the now shocked girl. Zabuza appeared behind Haku, who stood gaping at the new form of Isaribi in front of him. She was experimented on Yano Haku, Zabuza told his charge. Done by a guy called Orochimaru and his subordinate Amachi. Poor thing. Isaribi seemed to be suffering from a heart attack as Naruto clamped her hands in his and talked about how cool she looked. Haku, however, was a different story. You know how teenage boys are. So beautiful, he said as Isaribi changed into her fish form. Zabuza blanched at his adoptive son's taste in beautiful women. Naruto art. Flashback jutsu. Kai. Ever since then Isaribi had taken to not wearing her bandages around the campsite, only putting them on in town or when they were allowing someone to come near them. Zabuza didn't want to start a panic and have Amachi's men come after Isaribi. She was too important to his plans to let her go. And she was important to Haku as well. Ino stood battered and bruised on the arena floor. His opponent in the preliminaries was brutal and vicious to anyone stupid enough to mention the one subject that had become taboo around her. Sakura went into a flying rage if you mentioned Naruto in any form of slander. Whoa, Sakura sure is pissed, Choji said munching on his snacks. Hinata was beginning to scare her teammates with her dark muttering. Kill her Sakura. Rip out her throat, pummel her into an inch of her life. Beat her to a pulp. Poor Kiba who stood next to her shivered as one of her hands clenched the railings and the other pulled his hair. Hinata was mad again. We seriously need to get this girl a hobby, he groaned as his root began to pull out. Tsunade drank her sake silently as the pinkett stared murderously at Ino. She had to admit, she liked those two girls. Angered easily and psycho when need be, her kind of girls. Now if only Shizune was like them I could teach her to summon slugs. You need to be tough to face off most of them, she muttered. Another gulp of sake later and Tsunade returned to watching Ino give up. Boring. And Sarutobi Tem won't let me place bets, she mumbled and pouted into her hand. Shizune soon returned from the hospital ward in the tower. Lady Tsunade. All former combatants are well and fine. Sasuke Uchiha is making a good recovery and the curse seal has been sealed by both Jiraiya and Kakashi, she reported. Whoop data, Tsunade said with less enthusiasm than Inara. Just tell me when someone is seriously hurt. Then I'll fix him up. The legendary medic Nin returned to her sake. Ah, Minato and Dan both loved their sake, she spoke nostalgically before downing another bottle of the alcoholic beverage. From behind her Jiraiya sighed. Tsunade was thinking about them again. He knew it was wrong to think ill of those who gave their lives for the village, one being his own student, who had cursed his son to a life of loneliness just to save a bunch of ignorant and selfish ninja. 12 years after Tsunade and Dan had gotten together, and 6 since her beloved died, Jiraiya finally met up with his old teammate again. Only to discover his student was the son of his old crush. He had felt Tsunade twist the knife in his chest even more that day. Koyuki Kazuhana sat on her new throne as the last of her uncle's miserable servants were sentenced to life imprisonment. After being forced back by her manager, Sandayu, Koyuki, formerly Yukie, had been forced to stage a coup on her unsuspecting uncle, who now lay dead at the foot of the broken mirror of the Rainbow Glacier. Her heroes stood behind her with triumphant looks on their faces. Naruto Uzumaki. Blonde Hyoten user and big fan of her work. He held a soft spot in her heart when they had gotten to talking. It had been the hyperactive knucklehead to finally convince her to organize a coup. Isaribi Mamachi. An experiment, turning a young girl into a monster. Koyuki had taken it hard when she first noticed the green-scaled and gilled skin. Isaribi was a beautiful young woman with a curse placed upon her by some psychopathic bastard. Haku Mamachi. Koyuki had to admit she was insanely jealous of Haku's looks. She had first assumed him to be a girl saying that he was beautiful. When the revelation about his gender was revealed, Koyuki thought that the young feminine boy before her was gay. Zabuza Mamachi. The adopted father of Haku and Isaribi. Former member of the Seven Swordsmen of the Bloody Mist. A-rank criminal. Master of his sword and last of the Mamachi clan. And someone she was attracted to. Come on, she's a lonely woman for crying out loud. Koyuki smirked as Naruto tried to stuff his face with party food from the festival to commemorate the changes to the land of snow, both politically and physically. Zabuza walked over to her and began to whisper in her ear. Princess. A word please. It was no request but an order from the missing Nin of Kiri. Koyuki knew better than to argue with someone like him unless there was something you had which you could use to support you. That thing was courage. Courage the princess doubted she had. Zabuza led her down a hallway and into a small chamber. There he turned to her and sighed. Princess, I need a favor. He seemed to be begging for this. Koyuki allowed him to proceed with an, depends on what it is. I need to find an old, friend of mine in Fire Country, he said looking down on the daimyo of snow. Koyuki raised an accusing eyebrow at the masked nin. Oh, what kind of friend? She asked dibble-vingly. Zabuza replied, another of the swordsmen. Out of the 7 of us only 3 ever left. One is in Akatsuki, another is me, the last may be insane so I want to go get him. The woman put her hands on her hips and pursed her lips. Why do I not like the sound of that Zabuza? She accused. Zabuza smirked under his mask and drew closer to the female daimyo. Because you don't like the sound of me leaving you all alone. It was more of a statement than a flirty question. Koyuki blushed slightly before slapping Zabuza lightly on the bandages of his mask. Just go, pervert, she told him before hurriedly walking out. Zabuza called out to her, does this mean I can leave Naruto, Isaribi and Haku here with you? Koyuki growled before she re-entered her throne room. Very well then, she said before entering. Zabuza chuckled as he watched her retreating figure. She so likes me. Hyoten. Black Dragon Blizzard, Haku and Naruto cried out, before 2 dragons made of black snow extended from their right arms. The eyes and the insides of the mouth were red. Scarlet even. The 2 dragons intertwined around each other like an amazing dance. Isaribi watched with Koyuki, who was reading the script of the Ika Ika Paradise movie. A face of disgust was plastered to her face. When I find this, Jiraiya-sama, I'll make him wish he was never born. Or write these books, or agree to this movie. Bloody perverts. Isaribi giggled at the older woman's antics of swearing revenge for all women because of Ika Ika Paradise. Haku's dragon faltered as he ended the jutsu. He fell onto one knee panting, complaining about lack of chakra. Naruto grinned and sent a Hyoten, Senbon Renden at his older friend. Said boy grunted as a couple of Senbon hit his arms and legs. Why'd you do that for? He yelled. Naruto continued to grin maniacally. Because now you're injured and Isaribi has to fix you up. Haku turned a deep shade of crimson at finally figuring out Naruto's plan. You are so dead when I get my chakra back, Uzumaki. Naruto gulped as Haku wobbled back to Koyuki and Isaribi on the patio of the Great Garden. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to final rounds of the long-awaited Chunin exams, Sarutobi exclaimed to the crowd of the arena. A loud uproar of applause sang through the stadium. The competitors of the exams all stood in a line waiting for the matches to begin. Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, Neji Hyuga, Hinata Hyuga, Shino Aburame, Shikamaru Nara, Tamari Subaku, Gara Subaku, Kankuro Subaku. All 9 competitors stood in attendance for the exams to begin. However, one person was absent. Where's that Dosu guy? Shikamaru asked to Proctor Genma. The Senbon chewing Jonin replied in a lazy voice, dead. One less fight. That Sakura girl goes straight to the next round. Sakura let out a sigh of relief before standing back up straight again. It had been a hectic month. Kakashi had taken Sasuke to train him for his fight against that guy Gaara from Suna. Thanking her lucky stars, she would have fought that Dosu guy had he still been alive. Now she could reserve her strength to go into the next round. After Kakashi and Sasuke had hightailed it out of there, Sai, her new teammate, had disappeared with his trainer, that guy on the council called Danzo. Sakura had been pretty much forgotten, until Sakura had come across Shizune. When Kakashi had told them that after the Chunin exams he would be rejoining Anbu, regardless of whether or not they made Chunin. Sai would continue to work on their team and they would get a new sensei. Their sensei turned out to be a Junin who had been apprenticed and had amazing skills. They had worked with the team after Sai joined and before the Chunin exams to make the transition a little more co-opable. Shizune would be their Yoni instructor when Kakashi left for Anbu. Unfortunately, that had put Team 7 in a strange predicament. All members of their squad had S to begin their name, and their squad number began with an S. So now they had been dubbed Squad S. The only S's they didn't do was S-rank missions and secret jutsu. Sakura had spent the last month training under her, and though it may sound bad, Kakashi was a joke compared to this woman. She took her job seriously. She was there on the dot, and left behind anyone who was late. They had to catch up with her. When Kakashi told her his philosophy on scum and people who leave behind friends, Shizune replied with Hyakrite and also said none of these, including him, were here friends in the first place. Shizune was serious about their training. Sai and Sasuke seemed to drift to Kakashi during training, Sasuke for the Sharingan and jutsus, and Sai for help with his painting work. That left Sakura and Shizune. Shizune had pounded into the poor girl all of her healing knowledge and her techniques. Sakura was probably the most overworked member of the team. Poisons and Senbons were dancing in her dreams, and the constant healing techniques were so demanding, Sakura was forced to increase her chakra supply by Shizune's advice. Hang Yu spied down from the third Hokage's nose on the Hokage monument. Sakura was bullied into that by her teacher and ended up impressing some foreign dignitaries and shinobis. This of course went unnoticed to her but not to Shizune, who used it as propaganda to raise Konoha's appearance. The next day had shinobi from all other villages visiting taking turns to hang upside down from the monument. That was explainable, seeing as if the Konoha nins did it to become stronger then maybe they would get stronger as well. Unfortunately a lot of ninjas with crappy chakra control ended up either in hospital or 6 feet under by the time people stopped doing it. It was also the reason why so few ninjas were in the first round of the Chunin exams. First matchup is Neji Hyuga versus Hinata Hyuga, Genma announced. Everyone but these two, get the hell out of here. The remaining genin made their way to the staircase that led to the observation booth for the competitors. Neji and Hinata stood staring at each other, fires of hell burning into each of the other. Give up now, Lady Hinata. Fate has decreed me the victor of this battle, Neji told his younger cousin who merely responded by spitting at his feet. Shut up and fight, pretty boy. Up in the stands Hiashi Hyuga growled in frustration. Never again would he let another Hyuga girl train under Anko Mitarashi again. For the sake of the innocence and sanity of the young women. A month ago, Hinata had snuck out of the Hyuga compound and snuck all the way into the tower at the center of the Forest of Death, and begged Anko, who lived there, to take her on as an apprentice. Anko had been reluctant to take in any student, let alone a Hyuga whose clan would cause trouble for her teaching the girl. However, after much begging and pleading, Anko finally caved and took in Hinata. The young heiress had actually taken on some of her master's tendencies. She had an array of kunai, senbon, dango and bottles of sake hidden on her person. The jacket was long gone, replaced with a fishnet shirt with pieces of cloth hiding her important and large chests. A leather skirt and shorts were worn. Instead of ninja sandals, Hinata wore black, steel-toed boots, and bandages on either leg, and her headband was proudly displayed on her forehead. Neji growled at his transformed cousin. Where was the weak-willed girl with no hope of ever getting stronger and destined to be a weak loser for the rest of her life? Can we hurry this up? I want kick the Uchiha-san to next Monday already, Hinata said, taking out a kunai at the ready. Up in the stands Sasuke scowled at the Hyuga heiress. Her defeat him. What a joke. The Curry of Life shop was shabby on the outside but gave an aura of friendliness. That's what Grandma Sancho gave whenever someone wanted to have some curry. Even missing nins. Zabuza sat across from his former friend and ally at the table with the strange curry in front of them. Long time no see, Raiga-kun, he joked at the fat-lipped swordsman. Raiga growled at his pet name, and replied with malice in his voice. What do you want, Zabuza-senpai? He asked accusatory. Zabuza smirked under his bandages before replying. Well, I've been hearing some strange rumors about you, Raiga. Funerals for guys not dead yet. Forming a family of bullies and thugs. I had you pinned for someone much better than that. I give them great funerals. Funerals that they will be remembered for. And what about you? Dressing a Hyoten user up as a girl and having your way with him. Raiga yelled. Zabuza glared dangerously at Raiga. I do not have my way with him. Haku is my son, as is Isaribi and Naruto. They are my little family and my tools for much bigger things than. He put his face closer to Raiga's. I'm offering you a chance to throw off those hunter nins on your trail. Raiga's eyes alerted Zabuza of his attention. Snow country. They have that nice heat generator now. Ice users and chakra armor. Good looking daimyo too. Yano Ikui Fujikas. Raiga's eyes widened and drool began to fall from his mouth at the mention of his favorite actress. She's the daimyo. And well, she owes us big for putting her back on the throne. No more running. Yukikage. Anbu captain. I think we can get her to agree. Even help us against the Mizukage. Oh wait, I forgot to tell you. He's a fake. Raiga's eyes bulged. What? Ever hear of Madara Uchiha? Zabuza said smirking. Of course. Who hasn't? Raiga replied. Zabuza's hidden smirk grew bigger. Well, he just so happens to be the Mizukage at the moment, and a member of Akatsuki. The face of Raiga grew into an ugly sneer at that news. Madara Uchiha, that bastard is the Mizukage. Hook, line and sinker. Raiga would help him no matter what with what came next. Yeah, and the Akatsuki are after one of my kids. So we'll probably meet up with Kisame and Madara as well. I'm in, Raiga replied. He had a few scores to settle with those two. Good, so tomorrow we leave for Snow Country. Pack tonight after you announce to your thugs to disband. If they don't kill 'em all, and to seal the deal they both took a bite out of their curry. A fact they both regretted the moment they ate it. RRRRRRRRRAAAAAAGGGGGHHH. Renmara, who sat there to the side throughout the whole thing, widened his eyes as the two swordsmen each shot pillars of flame from their mouths. I never knew Raiga-sama could use fire jutsus. Is that how the swordsmen of the mist always seal deals? He asked innocently as the two men used Sweden to regain the feeling in their tongues again. Begin, Genma announced, and the stadium went into a roar of excitement and anticipation. Neji rushed at Hinata at impressive speed, appearing in front of her before she had time to blink. He extended his hand and arm and began his assault on his cousin. Prepare to fail, Hinata-sama. The sama had not been a sign of respect but a sign of sarcasm. 8 trigrams, 64 palms, 2 palms, 4 palms, 8 palms, 16 palms, 32 palms, 64 palms. Each strike was sent with a wave of malice and hate towards the intended recipient of the attack. During the whole attack, Hinata didn't move or flinch. When it was over, Neji jumped backwards with a triumphant smirk plastered on his face. Proctor, call the match, he called. However, Hinata had other plans. She yawned. Are you done yet? You're boring me to death. What a silly technique, she said before beginning to inspect her black nail-polished nails. A bored expression was plastered on her face. How? Neji demanded to his cousin. Instead of telling him, Hinata showed him how she had avoided his attack. She removed her headband and scratched the top of her forehead. It began to peel until a large chunk big enough to grab was revealed. Giving a sharp tug, Hinata pulled off her skin. It ripped off her and revealed that her outfit was underneath this skin. As soon as it was all gone, Hinata dropped it to the ground before returning her headband to her forehead. Snakes peel their skin, don't ya know, she said as Neji gave a look of disgust. I have several other snake skins like that all over my body, dear cousin. Let's see you try and take those off. Don't tell me, Anko, you didn't, both Kurenai and Hiyashi said in unison, never to know they did. IGTOW, tired of this Neji Tem, Hinata said before biting her thumb. A pity. I wanted to taste what branch member blood tasted like and compare it to a main branch member's. Oh well, I'll never know if there is a difference between the two at this rate. Hiyashi felt shivers run up his spine as Hinata drew blood. She did. Anko, you will wish you were never born. I already do, a voice rang from behind him. Hiyashi and his youngest daughter Hanabi turned around to see Iruka, Shizune and Anko sitting there with smirks of triumph on their faces. About time Hinata got some backbone, Iruka commented, munching on popcorn. Too bad Neji only knows taijutsu. Had he known any other jutsu he would lose with some dignity. Anko smiled. She learned from the best. The best what? The best psychopath. Hiyashi accused. Yep. Summoning jutsu. Hinata cried. No one, not even Anko or Hinata, expected what came out from the smoke of the summoning technique. In the middle of the arena stood the king of snakes, Manda himself. To summon him, Anko had to save up so much strength just to bring him there for a few minutes. It was then that he agreed to grant Hinata to snake contract, saying she was a much more pleasant sight than Orochimaru, and was more beautiful than Anko. In the cage's box, the cage began to sweat. Never before had Minata ever called him master. Nor had he ever allowed someone untalented and unworthy to sign the snake contract. But somehow this girl did exactly that. She was the master of Manda and a Hyuga. Manda, I have a meal for you, Hinata said in a playful voice, finally getting over the shock. But we can't kill him. You know what to do, she said, sitting Indian style atop the Snake King's head. Manda gave a dark chuckle and smiled. Yes, Mistress Hinata. Manda plunged his head down on Neji, Hinata never losing balance. He then completely swallowed the Hyuga boy. Many saw the bulge in the snake's throat that was Neji. After 5 mutes, Manda roared in laughter, then coiled up. He grunted, then moved away to reveal a little present on the ground of the arena floor. Neji lay, half of his body within the brown mess. Tenten ran for the toilet and many of Konoha looked in disgust. However, the Sunanins, most of the Rookie 9 and a majority of Junins, even the Hokage, roared in laughter at the Hyuga boy's predicament. Hanabi had never before felt so much shame of being a Hyuga, both main or branch family. Hiyashi sat gapping and many branch members felt tears in their eyes. Tears of ridicule. Hey Neji Tem, Hinata called down to her cousin. When the Hyuga boy looked up, Hinata waved. If you cut out all that fake crap, then when I'm clan head I'll see to it that you loose that seal. Hinata leapt down from her place on Manda's head, and received a lick of the tongue from the Snake King. Everyone familiar with this knew that this was the snake's equivalent of a kiss. The Snake King whispered in her ear before poofing out of existence. Proctor, call it, she called over. Genma had been too busy either being in shock from Neji being swallowed, and raging in laughter at the Hyuga teenager being snake poo. When he heard Hinata, he complied, calling the match in Hinata's favor. Next, Hinata did something that no genin should know. She did the leaf shunshin, disappearing from the arena and appearing next to the Hokage. Hokage-sama, may I have a word? I want to discuss policies with you, she lied with a cheery face. Sarutobi narrowed his eyes at Hinata before nodding to Genma to continue to the next match whilst he stood and left with Hinata. Inside the hallway, Hinata used a handy trick she had learned years ago. The soundproof jutsu. Hokage-sama, you are in danger. Manda-chan told me that the cage is. Wait, Manda-chan? The Hokage asked in shock. This isn't the time, she expressed. The cage isn't really the cage. It's Orochimaru in disguise. He also told me a bunch of ninja are summoning a few of his outside of Konoha at this moment. It's an invasion, Hokage Dono. Sarutobi looked out to where the blazing sun shined into the arena. I have an easy solution to this, he said before turning to the snake holder. Hinata, collect all Junin and Chunin. I'll go to the school and evacuate all citizens. Have the others do the same. Oh, and one last thing. Shadow clone jutsu. Henge. Next thing Hinata knew, a shadow clone of the Hokage stood next to him with a hanged shadow clone in Hinata's appearance. Let's go give Orochimaru a nice welcome home party. Kankuro had forfeited his match against Sasuke and Shino now stood before Gaara. His Kenkai bugs laying at his feet. Dead as doorknobs. Gaara gave the Aburame boy a bored expression before rapping his sandal run the boy. Sand coffin. Shino's screams echoed around all of Konoha as his legs were permanently disabled. Shikamaru's and Temari's fights will be the same as in the canon. As Sasuke went down for his match against Sakura, feathers began to fall from the ground. A genjutsu. Up in the cage's booth, the cage grabbed the Hokage and pulled him high up above the building and onto the roof. He threw the Hokage down to the ground and let him lie there, giving him dark glances. So Mando was correct. It is you, Orochimaru. Had Sarutobi seen Orochimaru's face, he would have seen the pale man's face contort into anger. He had been betrayed by his own summon. Of all the nerve. Sound 4, he ordered. 4 ninjas, each bearing the headbands of Odo, readied themselves on the 4 edges of the roof. One was a kunoichi with flaming red hair. Another was a boy with 6 arms. Another was a large boy with an orange mohawk. The 4th was a boy with 2 heads. Within seconds, a purple barrier of negative chakra rose up and formed a cube, entrapping the Hokage and Orochimaru. A battalion of Anbu surrounded the cube, preparing to attack should the cube falter. Ku, Orochimaru chuckled at them. His pale skin seemed to become purple in the light of the cube. Shouldn't you Leaf Ninja be defending your home from my invasion forces? He joked. Already taken care of, hubby Tem, a familiar voice sounded. The Anbu squadron separated down the middle to reveal Jiraiya and Suon standing there. It had been Jiraiya who had spoken. Thanks to Hinata, we were able to collect all of our available ninja. Your invasion force, Sound and Sand, are both defeated. Orochimaru snapped. At least I have your precious Hokage in my grasp. Tsunade raised a giggling eyebrow. Do you really? All I see is a shadow of his former self. Orochimaru didn't catch on to the hint, however. At that moment, Hinata's replacement poofed away and the remaining genins leapt up to the roof also. Trapped like a rat, Tenten spoke as she saw the snake Sanin trapped within his own jutsu. Is everyone alright? Hinata called, leaping over to them. Hinata, but you were over there and you disappeared, Ino stated. The Hyuga girl just smirked evilly. Wonderful things, shadow clones and henge, she said as the real Sandaime Hokage to joined in with the battle. Orochimaru turned wide-eyed to his captive. The shadow clone dispelled himself, leaving Orochimaru and his subordinates trapped within the cube. The Sanin growled as Tsunade howled with laughter. Well, Ochi-chan. I remember a scene quite like this one. Me, Jiraiya and Sarutobi sensei standing outside a chakra barrier and you trapped inside. Only this time we're not helping you out. We're gonna bide our time for you to find a way out yourself, and then I'll pound you for abusing my grandfather's DNA. Orochimaru, however, smirked before replying in his sickly evil voice. Well, 1 out of 3 isn't so bad. He looked over to Sasuke and grinned. I at least have the Uchiha marked. He began to go through an array of hand signs before settling on the tiger and whispering the jutsu. The sound 4, Orochimaru and the cube of chakra all disappeared in a large bang. The 2 Hyoten users and demon of the ocean stood across from their sensei and adoptive father. A guy with lips that looked like a bee had gotten to them, and a kid in a sort of cocoon. Raiga and Renmara were freaking them out already. These 2 will be tagging along with us from now on, alright ya damn brats? Zabuza asked them. The 3 merely nodded as Renmara's eyes glowed red and sparks blew out from the tip of his twin swords. Are you serious? You want a Yukikage? The young daimyo asked as the council pleaded with her on their decision. Not just a Yukikage, a Takikage, a Kuskage, a proper Hoshikage, and a Mekage, a Torikage, and maybe a Namikage. When Wave gets its shinobi village up and running, the representative began. Do you know the uproar that'll cause when we present that to the 5 great nations? Yukie asked as if the council had been replaced by asylum ditchers and were willing to cause war. Hey, in the shinobi world a meal could cause a war, hint. We already have the support of the other villages. We just need to make our stand against the Raikage and the Mizukage. The cage was found bound and tied up underground last week. The Sandaime Hokage is stepping down and both he and his successor will be at the meeting. Tsuchikage-sama has agreed. He's only a boy but he is wise beyond his years, the council member said, stating the facts. If I say yes, will you get off my back about it? What? Zabuza and Raiga exclaimed at the announcement of Yukie. There is no way we are going. Oh yes you are, the daimyo told them threateningly. But the Sandaime Hokage will be there. He'll demand to know about Naruto, and have you forgotten Mizukage equals Madara Uchiha? He'll know it's us the minute we walk into the same country as the meeting. And you'll be needed to unmask him, Yukie announced to her two new subordinates. Zabuza, I want you here to become my Yukikage. Once we unmask Madara, we'll help secure Raiga's place a Mizukage, she spoke. Raiga and Zabuza were caught off guard by her announcement. We will pave the way for Renmara to take Raiga's place, and Haku the same for Zabuza. But what about Isaribi and Naruto are their own people? Naruto will naturally be deviated to Yuki or Konoha. And if I'm not mistaken, we'll likely be seeing Isaribi staying here for her Haku Kukoi-chan, she hinted with a sneaky and devious face. Zabuza had the decency to look sheepish at this remark. Raiga however tisked and sighed. Renmara will be disappointed. He likes Isaribi. No, he likes Haku. He still thinks he's a girl, right? He thinks she's just gender confused. So when is this meeting thing? Naruto inquired from atop of his pillar of ice. Haku sat next to him on his own pillar whilst Isaribi practiced her chakra control by using the mixture of water walking and tree climbing. Currently she was walking on a pill made of pure running water. Renmara was next to her on a pole of lightning, trying to balance himself without losing his chakra control, which would not only make him fall but would electrocute him. Zabuza's sweat dropped at the four of them. All only genin and creating their own chakra control exercises. If the newer generations got any better, there would be so many less possibilities for jutsus in the future. One wheel from now, Yu-chan wants you all there. She wants to show you off as her most promising genins. Oh, Zabuza-tusen, are you finally getting me a new mother? Although with how she acts you'll be my mother and she'll be my tusen, Zabuza-oka-san, Haku joked. I'll buy a dress for the wedding, Isaribi joked. Should I book the shrine now or when you get up the gall to propose to her? Renmara joined in. It was Naruto who went the furthest so far. As long as I can give the next daimyo of Snow Country their name, I'll be satisfied. To think an Otudo who'll become the lord of a whole country. We can play the part as their council. The others all looked at him strangely. What? It's not like he's not butting his banana in her donut yet, right? They've probably been doing it since you came back. Naruto, where the hell did you learn that sort of stuff? Raig asked, blushing at the mention of bananas and donuts. It was Renmara who was the only one besides Naruto who was not blushing. Even Yukie and her council, who had been walking towards them, turned red at the mention. Oh, Naruto replied, blushing. As a bonding exercise, Kakashi-san had us all do a book report on Ika Ika Paradise before we started any missions. That man is a lifesaver, Zabuza muttered under his breath, thanking his lucky stars he didn't have the horrible duty of telling Naruto of where babies come from. Now if only they could stick him with Renmara when the time came. Zabuza grunted as the Hokage and Mizukage stared down at him. All had gone as expected. However, one small tidbit of information was different. Madara had already been revealed as the Mizukage and a new one had taken his place. This one liked people with bloodline limits. All this time he had been fighting just to find that his revenge was gone forever. Well, at least he could hate the new Mizukage for something. A couple of years ago the Mizukage had been a farmer on the outskirts of a small village in Water Country. His wife and child both held a bloodline limit and he had tried to kill them. He killed his wife but his son was able to save himself and kill the mob the Mizukage had gathered. The man had survived to become Mizukage after having a revelation of how bad the bloodline purges were. You can see where this is going. The current Mizukage was Suikage Kaio. The father are Haku Mamachi, formerly Haku Kaio. Hanzo, Lily, Shibuki, Sumeru, Tazuna and a man called Chishima stared at Zabuza expectantly. They looked flabbergasted at what he had just said to the new Hokage. It went something like this. Wow, not even the Waijutsu has S as big as that. How old are you? 15? 19. Aren't you a little young and good-looking to be stuck behind a desk all day? It was Zabuza's secret ninja art of deception. Flattery and shameless flirting. Tsunade looked at him with her fellow cages behind her, sizing up the wannabe cages. Zabuza Mamachi, hopeful Yukikage. Lily Kurohana, hopeful Kusakage. Shibuki, young man whose father was the previous leader of Waterfall, hopeful Takikage. Chishima Tsubasa, hopeful Torikage. Hanzo, current leader or aim and hopeful Amekage. Tazuna, stand-in for future ninja village with the title of Namikage going to his grandson. Sumeru was the successor of the dead unofficial Yondaime Hoshikage, and hopeful for the official position. 6 candidates each presenting their case for giving their hidden villages. Tsunade next did the unthinkable. She blushed scarlet. Every cage or cage wannabe that knew her or knew of her reputation felt their eyes bulge out of their sockets and their mouth resemble that of fishes. However, she did what she did best. Zabuza was sent flying backwards into the wall with enough force to dent into his shape and not send the missing nin from mist through it. Tsunade felt amazing after that. After hearing that he had kidnapped her only grandson, Tsunade made it a personal vendetta against Zabuza Mamachi and his apprentice. So you want these 7 minor nations to have their leaders become their respective cages. You claim this will distribute the balance of power equally in our country and help raise the profiles of your village. Is that correct? The Mizukage asked the leaders of the smaller villages. Hi, Mizukage Dono, Zabuza replied. The other 6 village leaders replied in similar fashions. It would help to have a cage to allow us to gain more clients. Villages with cages are seen in high regard, Lily told the others. Lily Kurohana was a woman in her mid-30s. Her hair was as black as night and her eyes a pair of rose-colored jewels. She was tall and thin, preferring to wield a Buddhist staff instead of any normal weapon. Tazuna nodded in his approval, but not before shooting Zabuza a dark look. It was because of him that Naruto had disappeared and Tazuna had grown to like the kid, especially after he got Inari determined to become a ninja. The Raikage and his daughter Yugito stood in attendance staring down Raiga, who had come with Zabuza to the meeting. He wouldn't normally have been intimidated had Yugito not be winking at him and blowing kisses at the lightning sword wielder. And Yugito wasn't the only person from Kumo flirting, but her father as well. Throughout the meeting, Raiga sweated and shook in fear as the two looked at him with hungry eyes. Chishima was a mere representative for the land of birds. He had basic ninja training, which actually made him the strongest ninja. Their knew so they are sort of weak. Naruto was also there, trying discreetly not to look into Sandaime Hokage's eyes. He didn't want the old man to recognize him. Not now, not ever. If he did, then he would probably be tried as a missing nin. Then they would probably take his DNA to make Hyoten using children for their village. Then Naruto would be killed because of Kyuubi. Haku stood there with clenched fists staring at his father. Suikage became nervous under the glare Haku fed him. To the Mizukage, the boy seemed familiar. He seemed effeminative, but Suikage just knew that this was a boy, not a girl. It was a gut feeling. And whenever Suikage looked into the boy's eyes, he had flashes of the sun that nearly killed him to defend himself. We might as well, came the lazy drawl of the Tsuchikage. Everyone turned to the 16-year-old boy. His expression was that of a lazy person. You could actually believe that this guy was a Nara, only lazier than them. He had copper red hair and chocolate brown eyes. His skin was tan brown and his messy hair hung in his eyes. Usagi Chiba was the youngest Tsuchikage in history and a grandson of a Jinchuriki. Tsuchikage-sama. Why? The Kazekage asked. He had recently been freed from an underground base in his village after Orochimaru had double-crossed him. The only reason he wasn't dead yet was because some of Orochimaru's favorable subordinates had taken a liking to him. Usagi sighed and pointed at the cage wannabes. Well, it'll be tiresome for us not to. They'll just complain about unfairness and I find that all too tiresome. Tsunade whispered to her old sensei. You think the Chibas are related to the Naras? She asked. Sarutobi replied with a sort of answer. Maybe. I think the Naras might have been a branch of the Chibas. They're not this lazy. Amazing how someone so lazy could become a cage. So are we all agreed? Usagi asked, balancing a pencil on his finger using nothing but his chakra. Come on, there's a party back in Iowa tomorrow and my Gramps is coming out seclusion for my birthday. I don't wanna miss him. All in favor? The Raikage asked. The only one who did not raise their hand was Tsunade. Hokage-sama, why have you not raised your hand? The Mizukage asked his Konoha counterpart. Tsunade gave such a cold stare that, had she been a Hyoten user, she would have frozen all of the land of fire with it. First, I want to know something, she reported. The other people in the room all looked up at her, expecting her to reveal to them a revelation of cage proportions. Where is my grandson? She asked Zabuza. The missing nin blanched. How the hell am I supposed to know? He asked her. Tsunade took in a deep breath before replying. When I was much younger, I was married to a man named Dan Namikaze. He and I had a son before he died. His name was Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage. And Konoha's yellow flash, the Tsuchikage said, not bothered by the revelation that the most hated and revered person in Iowa was the son of the woman before him now. Correct, he was. He died sealing the nine-tailed demon fox into a newborn. In doing so cost him his life. However, before he died he fathered a child. I never knew of this and Sarutobi never found me to tell me the truth. Because we believed Iowa, here she acknowledged the Iwakage, was still sore about the ninja war, Sarutobi decided to keep the child's heritage and SSS rank secret. That child grew up with no one. 12 years later that child took a mission to wave only to disappear due to the thanks of our dear Zabuza here. Zabuza's eyes widened. Naruto took in a sharp breath. Haku began to sweat and everyone looked at Tsunade with wide eyes. Don't tell me that. Zabuza began, never finishing due to shock. Yes. I am Tsunade Senju, mother of Minato Namikaze, mother-in-law to a woman named Kushina Uzumaki and grandmother to Naruto Uzumaki. The boy you kidnapped. Silence followed. The hotel room was deadly silent. No one dared speak to Naruto. Haku and Isaribi kept giving each other glances of worry as Naruto just stayed silent and continued to look out at the full moon hanging in the sky. Renmara returned later with a bowl of ramen, but Naruto didn't go anywhere near it. Zabuza and Raiga next door didn't dare to intrude on the kids. Naruto just sat there like a statue. The Yondaime Hokage was his father. The man who sealed the Kyuubi inside his gut was also the man who gave a piece of himself for the Jinchuriki to be born. Why had Tsurugi-san never told him of this? Sure, it was for his own protection, but Naruto knew better than to blab about something that would get him killed. He wasn't a complete idiot after all. But did Gigi have so little faith in him? Naruto looked pitifully out the window. He still remembered the save Zabuza had given to appease Tsunade. Naruto art. Flashback jutsu. Zabuza looked at Tsunade smack-jawed. Why, you're Naru-kun's granny? He asked. Damn, you're hot. Zabuza received a smack to the face for this, sending him hurtling back into the wall. Shut the hell up and tell me where my grandson is. And more importantly, where my son is, Zabuza, the Mizukage asked. You have an orphaned child from Kiri who can manipulate water without hand signs and make ice just as easy. I was nearly killed by a nin like that, probably the same nin, the only exception is he was no ninja before he nearly killed me. That was Haku Kaio, my son. Haku held his breath, resisting the urge to throw a 7-needle at his biological father's throat. The Mizukage continued, however. When you see him, tell him I am sorry. Haku was caught off guard by his father's request. This was the man who had, in the past, tried to kill him over something he had no control over. And he wanted sorry now. Granted, he didn't know that Haku was still alive or where he was, but still he did try to kill him. Zabuza sat up from the second indent of the wall before replying to the 50-year-old buxom Hokage. Chill, lady. Naru-kun's fine. He and Haku are traveling through the elemental countries now. We'll probably hear from them in a couple of months. Or sooner. Haku can't be far from his dear Issa-chan for long, he said, indicating to the fish girl. Zabuza was met again with another slap, this time from Isaribi. Damn, why are you slapping me? It's no secret you and him are doing the dirty. We are not like that pervert. Thankfully, this was what Zabuza was going for. Lie through his teeth and have Isaribi cause a scene. Flashback jutsu. Kai. He had a family. A grandmother who was searching for him. Moving hell and high water. Apparently the only reason she took up the position of Hokage was so that Naruto did not have to worry about hunter nins after him or Zabuza. The council member Danzo would kill to have the great-great-grandson, great-great-great-nephew, grandson, and son of the first, second, fifth and fourth Hokages, in his grasp. With a new Hokage came new advisors. Ones that could be trusted and who would back her up on disbanding the hunter nins and Anbu after him. But how far did that protection stretch? A coup could easily be staged and Naruto would be back to being registered as a missing nin. Isaribi left the room with Haku trailing behind her. This left Naruto all alone to his thoughts. Tsunade punched her way through boulders. Rubble, dust and slush that was once mighty obelisks of stone now littered the once grassy ground. Shizune, Sakura, Sai and Sasuke stood in attendance to her power. Naruto was alive according to that missing nin Zabuza, but to them, they could tell he was lying. Well, only about the traveling part. Tsunade took it all in as a lie, thinking that her grandson, her last link to Dan and Minato, was gone. Gone from this world and probably dead in a ditch somewhere. Either that or Zabuza had sold his body to someone like Orochimaru for experimentation. Sakura refused to speak to anyone. She was still coping with the idea that Naruto was truly gone. She had held the idea that he was gone, but now it finally seemed to sink in. Sasuke remained silent before walking off. Sakura didn't really care. He didn't seem to care about their teammate, so why should she care about him? All he cared about was getting stronger to kill his brother, and that seemed to occupy most of his mind, so Sakura didn't really bother with him. In truth, Sasuke was even more broken than before. Naruto saw beneath him, saw beyond the prim and proper of the Uchiha clan and had seen him adjust Sasuke. He had given Sasuke a way of measuring his power and to see how much he would improve. But without Naruto there was no one there to see him for who he was. No one to test himself again. The thought of Naruto Uzumaki made his blood run cold and regret to fill him inside. The thought of Zabuza and Haku, however, made him angrier than he had ever felt in his life. They were on his list to kill, right up there with Itachi. Sandaime remained in his hotel room with a picture of Naruto and Konohamaru. The poor kid had taken it just as bad as anyone. Naruto was his big brother and his rival. When Naruto disappeared, he had been heartbroken. His idol was gone, kidnapped on his first real mission. Hatred seemed to fill him up whenever Sasuke, Kakashi or Sakura passed him. A few students at the academy dropped out because they could not stand Konohamaru's killing intent. He was barely sociable now. His grandfather missed the constant attacks from the little boy. The only people he talked to were Hinata, Iruka and Tsunade, who had become like a grandmother to him. They reminisced about Naruto with Tsunade so she would get the idea of how her grandson was like. Iruka also took it hard. But he dealt with it in his own way. 1 week after Naruto's team returned without him, he had asked his old teammate Anko out on a date and had ended up sleeping with her. It was no secret that they were dating now. Anko seemed nicer now, but even more sadistic when she wanted to be. Iruka even stopped showing respect for most people and refused to talk to most civilians who had insulted Naruto. Half of them ended up in hospital because of insulting Naruto in front of Iruka. Anko found her boyfriend's attitude very Kinky, was the word she used. The day before the finals of the Chunin exams found the Hokage monument painted just like Naruto had done it, with the faces of the third and fourth Hokage more colorful and insulting than the other two. It was Iruka and Konohamaru who had confessed to the deed. It was sort of obvious when one plaque held the sign, reserved for Tsunade, another with, reserved for Naruto Uzumaki, and in the seventh place was one saying, reserved for Konohamaru Iruka. But since then all joy seemed to dry up in the village. Even those who didn't like Naruto and who had even attacked him as a child didn't feel happy with him gone. It was like everyone missed him. Some of the civilians would still talk about him like he was still in the village until someone pointed out that Naruto was long gone. But that was not the strangest thing. The weather even seemed to miss Naruto. It had been cloudy since Naruto had disappeared. Morale even seemed to dip at the prospect that there was no one to cheer them up anymore. Well, as the old saying goes, you don't know how important someone is until they're gone. Gaara glared daggers at his father and sister as they talked. Gaara didn't buy it. It took him to be locked up underground, beaten and have things done to him, to cause him to suddenly love all his children and act like a father. If that had been the case, Gaara would have done it years ago, but it just seemed too easy for him to be true. In Gaara's mind, Desiat and demons ran amok. But the Yondaime cage actually seemed to be trying. There actually seemed to be something odd about it. Gaara remembered the day that the cage had come to Konoha to pick them up. He had received reports from Baki and had decided to talk with the Hokage, ignoring the fact he was still emotionally and physically weak from his imprisonment. He had shown up just after the Chunin promotion ceremony. The Nara boy who had given up to Temari had become a Chunin, and so had the Hyuga girl, for an excellent battle in informing the Hokage of the invasion. In reality, it was her clan who had called that she be made Chunin. Gaara had overheard the two Hokages speaking about it. But they were impressed by her. But to Gaara something seemed off. When she received the vest, her heart beat faster. Her face flushed and she had pressed her index fingers together nervously as if embarrassed. A complete contrast to how she had acted at the exams. And for some reason, in any mode Gaara say her in his heart beat faster, blood rushed to his face and her outfit caused something to happen to him. She had made him bleed. Actually bleed, but not from combat, but from the way she dressed. This was all strange to Gaara, who had no idea what was going on. Poor Gaara. The meeting had ended, and by the time the sun rose that morning there were a handful of new cage positions. Kusakage, Takikage, Torikage, Namikage, Yukikage and the Hoshikage had become official, starting with its fifth cage. 11 cages stood in front of each other, sizing each other up. Tsunade looked around her at the robes that had been ordered for the new cages. White for Yukikage, violet for Hoshikage, orange for Torikage, cyan for Namikage, indigo for Takikage, yellow for Reikage, brown for Tsuchikage, blue for Kazekage, navy for Mizukage, and red for Hokage. Needless to say, Suan felt like part of a Super Sentai group with all these different colored robe uniforms. It made her feel uneasy for some reason. She also had a slight problem with all of the blue. Cyan, blue, navy and indigo. Was the color blue invading the world by possessing 4 of the cages of the elemental countries? Well, this seems like it is goodbye, Usagi said as he gave a long and helpless yawn after it. How in the name of the Shinigami had this lazy teenager ever become Tsuchikage? This question ran through the heads of everyone present other than the teenager and the delegates from Iowa. Well, thank you for everything, Tsuchikage-sama, Reikage-sama, Mizukage-sama, Kazekage-sama, Hokage-sama, Zabuza said as the 11 delegations prepared to leave. The hotel would be sad to see such a party leaving so soon. Between them all they had brought more business than a small conventio. Within 1 hour only the party from Yuki and Konoha remained. Zabuza prepared himself before speaking to Suand. Oh, Tsunade Haim, I have some information for you, he said to her minutes before they separated. Yes Zabu, I mean Yukikage Dono. The slip-up went unnoticed, but the malice and disgust in her voice was evident. Just thought you'd like to know. Naruto-kun will be returning to Yuki in 3 months. He's just finished leaving Fire Country and he and Haku will be visiting. You might catch him if you visit. The Konoha delegation stopped frozen in their tracks. Naruto had been to Fire Country. And in 3 months he'd be back in Snow Country. This was too good to be true. That's what Suan believed. Where's your proof? She asked, snarling. Zabuza quirked a non-existent eyebrow at the fire shadow. Didn't you believe me when I told you Naru-kun was still alive? Oh, how bad for you, Hokage-sama. To know you have no trust in me, Zabuza joked. Tsunade shivered at his tone. Here, he said, chucking a scroll to her. Suan caught it with ease, opening up the paper and reading. The Sandaime looked over her shoulder and his eyes bulged. That's Naruto's handwriting. Zabuza 2-san. Guess what? Me and Haku just left Fire Country and we're on our way back. We'll be back in Snow Country before long, so have our rooms ready in 3 months, cause then Haku and I will be bringing back presents for you guys. We ran into some Odo nins the other day. Haku dealt with them though. Anyway, I heard about that meeting thingy. If you see G-san there, tell him hi for me. If this reaches you after the meetings, then just ignore the last part. Haku is dragging me back in time for my birthday, so be ready to give me presents. It's on October 10th. Did you know that? Well, of course you know that, Zabu-san. I can't wait to see you guys again. Have a nice time without us. Love y'all lots. Naruto Uzumaki. P.S. Get me a hell of a lot of ramen when I get there. Haku won't let me have any. Sandaime read the letter aloud for Sasuke, Sakura and Kakashi to hear. Hinata and some of the Junins who had accompanied the delegation all stared at the note as if it held the secret to eternal life, which would need to be protected at all costs. If it was the secret to eternal life, you can bet Orochimaru would be after it. If anyone with dark intentions found out about this, then Naruto could be in danger. When the delegation looked up, the Yuki lot were gone. About 3 miles away, the Yuki lot broke out into roars of laughter. Did you see their faces? They looked like they'd seen a ghost. Zabuza wheezed. Isaribi giggled. I can't believe they fell for that. They did fall for that, didn't they? She asked. No doubt about it. Haku spoke from his scrying mirror as the Godime Hokage began asking Sarutobi for time off in 3 months, while Tsunade-samas have grown 0.5 inches in 1 month. Haku, you perv, Isaribi teased, ruffling his hair. Lil, Haku has a crush on his Odoto's granny. Do you know how gaggable that sounds? Naruto was supporting Raiga, who was laughing on him. We pulled a fast one on them. Kid, you're smart to come up with that one. Naruto grinned. Well, this way I can get used to the fact that I have a gran and meet her by the time I'm ready. Renmara stopped laughing for a minute. Does that mean you're going back? He asked. Everyone stopped laughing and turned to Naruto expecting his answer. Naruto just grinned manically. What kid of person would leave their family behind for people who hate him? Yukie gave a hearty laugh as Zabuza continued to smack his head against his desk. Paperwork. 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 I hate paperwork, was all that he said between the thumps his head made with the desk. Haku chose that moment, however, to return into the office carrying more paperwork. Haku, get out of here before I throttle you. The ice user laughed before sprinting out of the room and as far away from Zabuza as his legs could take him. Yukie thought that her dear Yukikage had had enough and settled next to him. Ah, as Buza-chan all nodded up. Is paperwork too much for the big, strong demon of the mist? She asked in a sickly baby voice. Woman, you are 1 word away from having your head cleaved off, he warned the daimyo, who merely laughed and wrapped her arms around him. Ya know, killing a daimyo would cause all sorts of problems, she cooed into his ear. And besides, she moved away from him and across the room towards the door, which she closed and locked. You would never get to see the whole body of Yukie Fujika's. Underneath you. Moaning. Begging you for more. Here she licked the side of his face. A small trickle of blood ran down from his nose. Well, them Buzakoi, come get it. The village hidden amongst the leaves. the center of all shinobi activity in Fire Country and the first ever hidden village. Founded less than years ago by the Senju clan and the Uchiha clan. The cultural hub of fire ninjutsu and bloodline limits. Today the Hidden Leaf Village celebrated the one day a year when they remember the founding of their great village. But years ago it was a day of scorn for the Uchiha clan, who when still alive, remembered the day their ancestor and mighty clan were held down by the first Hokage. Fireworks had been illuminating the sky all week and the construction on Tsunade's head atop the Hokage monument was delayed for another week, until the celebration early. In the Hokage office an air of joy and happiness was emitted from the room, which is odd since usually Tsunade is throwing chairs and her desk out the window. The Lady Hokage herself was acting strangely. She gave off a happy smile, without being drunk. She was doing her paperwork laughing at every paragraph, she actually smiled at Danzo at the elders and she was humming a tune which sounded oddly like the Macarena. To say Shizune was scared would be an understatement. She was having miniature heart attacks all over the place. Sandame stayed away from the office for the safety and welfare of his heart and in fear of his life. It wasn't just because of the festival that had Tsunade all happy and cheery. No, it was the fact that in 1 week it was the 10th of October and tomorrow she would start making her way to the land of snow, where hopefully her only grandson was and where she was going to meet him. Tsunade-sama, we must prepare for your departure. If you leave to collect the Jinchuriki, then you must first be prepared to leave a suitable bodyguard and regent for when you return, Hiashi informed the Hokage, who smiled dreamingly out the window. Just chill, Hia-chan, she said to him as the other council members giggled at how she had addressed him. The Hyuga head's eyes rose high into his forehead with shock and embarrassment plastered across his features. I've got my bodyguard all sorted out and Sandame and Kakashi will regent for me. Oh, and they'll be answering Tsuki Ichiraku with any of our complaints. He's my main regent. But he's a ramen chief. So, he's more loyal than any of you. He sees past hatred and what other people say about certain individuals. Surprisingly, he knows politics and he's there for the most important reason of all. Tsunade answered with a hint of evil in her voice. Really, Tsunade? And what reason may that be? Tsunade gave an evil sneer before replying. His appointment to regent. Everyone leaned in closer to hear what she had to say. Tsunade's sneer grew in intensity so much that it could be the sneer counterpart to Guy's good guy smile. She soon shouted the answer to the council. Quote, pisses you all off. She began to laugh as many recoiled in pain from her loud voice, before gaining looks of anger and malice on their faces directed at the Lady Hokage. Hey, did you hear? That Tsuki guy is gonna be the Hokage's regent. No way, the ramen chef. What is the Hokage thinking? His appointment pisses off the council. And apparently the rumors going around about him. You heard those as too. Ayame Ichiraku stopped dead in her tracks at what she had heard. Those rumors. No one had spoken of them in years. Back when she had been a little girl and her father had been. Shit. It was probably someone on the council who had leaked it out. If anyone found that these rumors were true, then her father would be either put to death, imprisoned, or sent away for the reward back to that place. Ayame had to warn her father. He was in danger. The ramen girl rushed through the streets pushing and shoving people out of the way, making it easier to get to the stand. She had to get there before someone got smart and drunk and did something regretful. Her brown hair trailed behind her and her eyes widened with every breath. Ayame was a sight to behold as she ran. Like a true work of art. She was too far away from the stand, so the ramen girl decided to take a shortcut. It was an alley which led down to the high street and to another alley where Ichiraku was. However, Ayame took a wrong turn and instead of seeing the other side, all she saw was a black cloak. The poor girl looked up into the man's eyes. She could tell it was a man from the fact that his chest was so flat. Ayame? He asked curiously. The voice was familiar. It danced in the girl's head like a symphony of yearning. The beating of Ayame's heart increased its pace, beating in tandem with the song that was whispering within her mind. You. What are you doing here? She asked frightenedly. The stranger was about to reply when she started up again. Never mind that. You have to get out of here. I'm already the daughter of one criminal. I can't be seen as the ex-girlfriends of another. However, the stranger grabbed her hand as she turned. Who said anything about ex-girlfriend? He smirked. Ayame stood there flabbergasted. Are you kidding me? She asked, scandalized. Do you have any idea how much I worry that you're still alive? I have to worry about if they haven't found you yet, and I'm always scared that they'll catch on to you. Tears appeared in Ayame's eyes. They cascaded down her cheeks like waterfalls onto her jawline. So you tell me, leaving me here without so much as a goodbye all those years ago. You told me what you had to do, but you could have gotten away with it, but I heard about it and it broke my heart about what I heard. You left me here and The rest of her rant was cut off as a pair of lips softly crashed down onto hers. The memories flooded back and engulfed her. The first time they met, their first date, their first date, their first time. The marriage proposal. Years and years flooded back before Ayame pulled away and slapping her ex-boyfriend. Baka, she told him. Just because you kiss me to say sorry to me doesn't make up for all the heartache. Come back when you can face me instead of just kissing me. And with that Ayame ran. Within 5 minutes she was in front of Ichiraku. But she was not alone. There stood Tsunade, Jiraiya, Sarutobi-san and Aruka, each ordering a bowl of ramen each. Spirits seemed high with them, but Ayame knew what she had to do. Naruto dodged Haku's Ice-7 barrage for the 6th time that day. The feminine boy had been ruthless in their training sessions. Zabuza had been teaching to show no mercy when faced in battle, especially in times of war. Haku, however, had taken these lessons to heart and attacked like this in every sparring match except against Isaribi. Naruto growled out his jutsu just in time. Hyoten. Black Dragon Blizzard Jutsu. The black dragon rose from the ground and spiraled at Haku. The boy, however, was unable to dodge and was sent flying into the wall of the Yukikage Tower. You'll pay for that, Ototo, Haku growled before moving at blinding speeds. Shadow Clone Jutsu, Naruto cried, multiplying himself as Haku appeared behind one of the 26 Naruto. The ice user aimed a kick at the top of his brother's head only for it to make contact and send Naruto up in a puff of smoke. He missed Ku-chan, the Narutos teased. Haku threw another 7 at the Narutos until all but one had dispelled. Haku Onachan, you wouldn't hurt your Otuto now, would you? Haku's eyes glowed evil as he aimed a kunai at Naruto. It whizzed through the air. Naruto ducked, and Isaribi had a kunai flying straight for her face. Her eyes widened in shock. Haku screamed at her. Naruto moved his hand as green chakra covered them. A vine spurted out of the ground and smacked away the kunai. Leaving Naruto, Haku, Isaribi and Yukie to marvel at the plant that now began to wrap around Naruto protectively. Itachi Uchiha scowled. He had been in this base for 6 weeks without getting to the outside world. His partner Kisame had gone on a recon mission to Mist. The rest of the Akatsuki had gone to their home villages to see what all the fuss was about. Parties had been occurring for over the past 3 months and none of them knew EHY. That freak Toby had gone to Konoha in his stead. The dark-haired teen scowled in his room, which was usually much different. He had done some redecorating since Kisame and the others hightailed it out of here. The floor was made of wooden boards, with a red rug thrown over it. A desk stood in the corner with a lamp and books residing on it. His bed was his usual but had a red blanket with the design of the Mangekyo Sharingan pictured on there. A jutsu had been used to create a space-time window in his room so he could see the outside world. A series of pictures littered his dark walls. One was of Sasuke, his little brother. Another was of his old charge who he protected in Anbu, and another one which had been faced to the wall. Itachi could not stand the eyes of that one. A calendar displayed the date and all of his memos. 2 particular dates stood out in the month of October. One of them was today. The day that Konoha was founded. It was usually the day an Uchiha was given shady looks whenever the E left their district. Despite the attitude of the general Uchiha population towards this holiday, Itachi always liked it. He especially enjoyed the date since the massacre. If it pissed off his family, then it was even better than Christmas. "Hey, Itachi-kun," came Zetsu's voice. "Enter." The bored monotone of the Uchiha Slayer called at the plant man phased through the floor. "You'll never guess what." Naruto poured out all of his energy and time into the books about Mokuden jutsus which had been taken by the Anbu of Mist decades ago when the man had died. Zabuza had taken them when he had left Kiri and had kept on to them in a sealing scroll. The Shidaime Hokage was the last known Mokuden user of the Senju clan, the clan whose bloodline limit was Mokuden. The Mokuden gene inhabits the Y chromosome in humans, meaning only men have the ability to use this. The female populace of the Senju clan obtain the power of longevity. However, there is also the cause of luck. Random members of the Senju clan will have terrible luck whilst others have amazing luck. The Shidaime had positive luck whilst his brother was only lucky in selling his perverted novels. The Nidaime Hokage was a pervert. Haku and Isarbi face faulted when they heard this. "Our hero is the forerunner of Jiraiya. Don't tell Yukie that or she'll go looking for the Nidaime's body, bring him back to life, beat him up then kill him again. She hates those books and all pervertism in general," Haku warned Naruto. "I think that's why she wanted to learn the Y jutsu," Isaribi stated. "She wanted to know if Zabuza was a perv before she got together with him. I wish he was a perv. Those two kept most of the palace up last night. I can't tell who moaned the loudest. Yukie, Zabuza are the people trying to sleep. The Shidaime's techniques can only be passed down to male descendants." Haku read. "So that explains why Tsunade never inherited the bloodline. Her brother Nawaki would have had he not died. The Mokuden gene is supposed to reveal itself a week before the 13th birthday of the descendant. So I guess it was last week," Haku said as the scroll went on to give a few wood jutsus that a beginner could use. "Mokuden is really handy. The chakra energist within the power is supposed to be able to control the biju. The Shidaime divided the biju between the countries as a show of faith and peace. The elemental chakra for Mokuden is water and earth. Hang on Haku, a while ago you told me fire and air make lightning if fire is the dominant element. How come there are people with lightning-based chakra then?" Naruto asked his Oni-chan. "Oh, I forgot. You don't know." Raiga chose that moment to walk into the library they were in. In the old day Raiden was a bloodline limit. However, many of the Raiden users married into thousands of other families. Eventually it was so common that lightning became one of the 5 elements. It happened with Hyoten and the Snow Country. Haku's clan is the original Hyoten users. I think it was the Hatake clan that were the original Raiden users, he explained. Naruto's ear picked up at this. "Hatake. Like Kakashi Hatake, my old sensei?" he asked. Raiga turned his eyes to him before replying. Yeah, I think so. Their clan was the only one who could still use the white lightning chakra. However, since Kakashi has the Sharingan, it has overpowered his own bloodline. If the DNA from that eye got into his DNA code, it could cause a race of users of only one Sharingan eye. The white lightning chakra could die out if someone didn't inherit it. Haku finished for his sensei's friend. "You're smart, kid," Raiga praised. "Normally it's elemental techniques that are divided when the clan members marry off. Dujutsus, and the Kekkei Genkei of the Kagaya, Aburame, Nara, Akamaiki, Yamanaka, and many other clans can't be shared. Males of the Uchiha are the only ones who can pass on their bloodline, whilst it's the female members of the Hyuga who pass on theirs. Something to do with Y chromosomes." "Hey, Raiga Oji," Naruto called after him. "What about the Mokuden? Am I the last user?" "Well, no, not exactly. There's a guy called Tenzo, but he was an experiment of Orochimaru, so he's got the DNA of the Shidaime Hokage. Then there's a bunch of Mokuden users from the Senju clan on another continent," the lightning swordsman explained. "So there are people who can teach me." Naruto asked, full of joy. The boat was headed to snow country. Itachi didn't care. His target was there amongst the snow. He had to find Naruto Uzumaki Senju Namikaze before the other Akatsuki did. He was too valuable to be left alone. Iruka and Tsunade sweat dropped as Konohamaru ran from a group of ninjas painted pink. Why did we bring him along again? Tsunade asked as the brown-haired pipsqueak used the Waijutsu on the ninjas he had been pranking. Because you lost a bet with him, Lady Hokage, Iruka stated. And why did you bring them with you? She asked again, indicating to his entire class who stood behind them. You're lucky you won those free rides, otherwise we would have had to pay for all of them. Well, no one was willing to sub and they won't leave me alone. Besides, it was a condition of your bet with Naruto Jr. I think even with this genjutsu I'm going to get gray hairs when I meet him. Iruka-sensei, came the voice of the youngest Hyuga main branch member. Iruka looked down towards Hanabi, who gave of a strange amount of killing intent, which was odd for her age. Please tell that insufferable little worm that we do not need the likes of him running Konoha's reputation through the mud. Tsunade didn't miss the high and mighty attitude that emitted from the Hyuga girl's request. Who did this princess think she was anyway? Damn Hyugas and their superiority complex. But Tsunade didn't like that kind of person. Someone who thinks of themselves above others didn't sit well with her. Oh Konohamaru, if you paint the ship and knock everyone out, I'll make damn certain you make Hokage, she yelled, TP him smiling. And while you're at, do something special for our Lil, pale eyes here. For the rest of the day Hanabi was unconscious due to blood loss from seeing her sensei. The Akatsuki was in an uproar. Itachi Uchiha had disappeared from the base after Zetsu had informed him of the cage meeting from a few months back. After he had heard about the Kyuubi brat in snow, he had hightailed it out of there before they could do anything to stop him. Pain sat with Conan as they overlooked the map of the entire elemental countries. So now the only country without a cage is Sound. With this new development, the other villages have far more political power, and trying to take over one village would be suicidal. We must plan our moves carefully so as not to be found out, the leader of the organization said as he drew lines with his eyes. Conan sighed defeatingly. Hi, Leader Sama, she replied, looking away from him. Pain's eyes squinted into a suspicious look. Conan, is anything going on? The blue-haired origami nin scowled at him before standing up. Yeah, something is going on. She moved towards the door, ready to leave. Those 6 pairs of eyes of yours are really blind. Pain, you have no understanding of women. She slammed the door, leaving Pain alone and confused. Must be that time of the month. Okay, fans of Son of a Daimyo, or Ninja no More. Little tidbit for you. Son of a Daimyo will resume when my muse come back from holiday in Japan with tons of new ideas for me. The story will focus on Naruto's development with the other daimyos and their children. The Konoha lot are to be considered background characters until I decide they can come back into the story. A list of characters will be up within next chapter. Ninja no More is going to fast. I never intended Sasuke to be gay. But rest assured Naruto will fall for either Hinata or another girl. I am deeply sorry to Bloody Redshade, you, 1,470,623, Bloody Redshade, for not pointing out that there would be one yaoi moment, ya didn't have to bleep on the review. There will be no yaoi so no panics to anyone. It's mostly violence. Fans of Champions of the Heart. Have no fear, there will be an update as soon as I can find the time to write anything else. Stupid plot bunnies. I blame the plot bunnies. They may be helpful but they are a pain in the ass. No one else will be revealed to be a guardian or guardian descendant just yet. To all Narnia fans, the new movie is awesome. I was in the States on halls and my friends dragged me to the cinema one night. It was completely awesome. Indiana Jones was good as well. It has resparked my love of the Chronicles of Narnia, as if it could die out in me anyway. To lovers of this story, Frozen Wood, I wish to thank you all for your reviews, and adding it to your story alerts. 7 alerts, 42 faves, 11 C2S and 76 reviews with 1941 views. Arigato. No A for some fun news. The gates to the capital of Snow Country loomed ahead. Yukigakure was a picture out of a storybook. Towers made out of an crystal-like substance and warm white and blue houses rode up. The mode of transport was boats which were used on the river which was there instead of a main road. For image of Yukigakure thing the northern water tribe from Avatar. Why didn't I ever come here when I was on the road? The legendary Sanin, Tsunade asked as the class of youngsters Iruka had brought along stared in awe at the hidden village. Oh yeah, Shizune got seasick. He, Naruto Nichan is here. I can sense him. Konohamaru smiled evilly. I can smell the after effect of an Uzumaki prank anywhere. Tsunade's sweat dropped at the display of psychoticness. That kid either needs a girlfriend or a trip to a psychiatric ward, she muttered to Moegi and Udon who shivered at Konohamaru's lack of self-restraint on his desire to meet Naruto. Hanabi scowled at her classmate. Hey Dobi, quit embarrassing us. We don't want the Snow Village thinking we are all weirdos like you. Can it pale eyes Tem? What did you call me? Are you deaf you darn stupid bitch? Why you sorry excuse for a Hokage descendant? I'll pound you into the ground for insulting my family's bloodline. That's a bloodline. I thought it was a disease that came with the sticks up your. Tsunade and Iruka suppressed a shared giggle as Hanabi tried to use Jukin against Konohamaru who was jumping around like a monkey and running around like a headless chicken. So you want me to play your character's son? Naruto asked Yukie as they ate lunch on the roof of the palace. What movie is it? A Princess Gale one. The famous actress, Daimyo responded to her knuckle-headed lil, bro. You're playing Gale's son who she never knew and never knew she had because she was in a coma when she was pregnant. You're adopted by the Rainbow Chakra mage in the mountains and raised by him and his wife. An evil smirk grew across her face. Your character is very interesting to say the least. Really? I'm that cool. Yukie Oba-san I'll do it. No sooner as he said it his face met the tiles of the roof. How many times do I have to tell you? It's Yukie Ne-chan for Kami's sake, the Snow Queen growled. Okay. Yukie Ne-chan for Kami's sake. Are you mocking me? The daimyo growled viciously. No. Yukie Ne-chan for Kami's sake. You better run you lil, fleabag. Yukie-sama. A snow junin announced his arrival in a swirl of snow. Yukikage Dono requests your presence immediately. A delegation from Konohagakure has arrived. Naruto clenched his fists and growled. Today was his birthday and the day he had told the Hokage that he would be returning to Snow Country with Haku after their supposed trip around the elemental countries. Great. Naruto drawled. Any chance of telling them I got myself blown up by a Kaden jutsu? He asked. Yukie gave him a stern look signifying her answer. You were the one who wanted to meet them on your birthday. Everyone else said that you could have just left out the last part about coming back. But no, you had to give a specific date. The blonde growled under his breath at the young woman and stood up to leave. Well, might as well go meet them. Maybe Iruka-sensei is there with them. Hey, do you know how many are here from Konoha? Naruto asked the Junin. The Junin replied. Hi. The Lady Hokage has arrived with one Chunin with a scar across his nose. He was stopped by Naruto's yell of joy. However, what the Junin said next brought Naruto's world crashing down, and 21 academy students, including the Sandaime Hokage's grandson. Shit. At the front gates Tsunade and Iruka's ears perked up. Well, I guess Naruto knows we're here. Iruka guessed judging by the familiar noise the orange-clad genin made whenever something extremely unexpected happened. Hey Naruto Nisan let us in, Konohamaru yelled to the boy he saw as a brother. Come on, I've got to show you the new pervy jutsus I created. The next noise that followed was that of a woman. A familiar woman which Iruka had only heard on the movie screens. Guards let him in. They have pervy jutsus. I must have them. Yukie Fujika's had Konohamaru in a bone-crushing hug. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, she exclaimed, nearly cutting off all air supply to the young boy's lungs. These'll show those pervs who's boss round here. Tsunade. Iruka and the class sweat dropped at the proclamation, however wheels were turning in Iruka's head. That's Yukie Fujika's. Damn it all, Naruto and Konohamaru have all the luck. No. Must keep clean thoughts. Anko would castrate me if she knew. Damn it all, Naruto, hurry up. So whilst we wait for my Otudo, how about some tea for us adults and we can send the kids outside to play with some of our trainees? The daimyo of Snow said. Honey, I'm home, the gruff voice of a man called. The door to the room slid open, revealing a sight which scared the youngsters in the room. It was Zabuza Momochi, demon of the bloody mist and current and first Yukikage. Oh, I see we have company. Iruka scowled at the cage in front of him with enough malice to make Manda shiver. However, the Chunin restrained his ki as to avoid trouble between the two nations. Zabuza greeted the guests pleasurably. Hokage done, Gaki core, Hiro no Mahoutsukai, he said to Iruka. The students turned their heads towards their sensei, who had gone deathly pale. Tsunade squinted her eyes at Iruka with a scowl across her face. Long time no see, ya damn Scarface, he joked at the Chunin. It ha.